people might look at me and say, yeah, you've been through some hell. And yeah, I have. But there are other people out in the world that have lost as much or more than me. Like, I look at my parents, I'm like, if I lost one of my kids, like, that's the scariest thing in the world, and they've lost 3 kids.
We're all imperfect, and on this podcast, I'll be chatting with a variety of interesting people who are willing to make themselves vulnerable by sharing their own struggles and imperfections. I'm Hugh Van Kuylenberg from the Resilience Project.
And I'm Ryan Shelton from my mum.
And I'm Josh from Hugh's mum.
And this is the Imperfects. Well, I'm not a surfer, but, well, 1, I wish I was. How cool would that be? But 2, if I was a surfer, I'd be 10 times more excited than I already am, which is infinitely excited. What's 10 times infinity?
Infinity.
That's right. Bit of maths.
Yeah.
Bit of maths for you. Bet you weren't expecting that, Hugh.
No, I wasn't, but I'm grateful.
Thank you.
No worries.
Mick Fanning Day.
Yeah, Mick Fanning Day.
Oh,
Yeah.
And episode 1 for the season.
Yeah.
It's a great start with Mick Fanning. He's unbelievable. I wanted so much to. We spent the summer holidays down the beach, and I so wanted to have some kind of surfing anecdote to kick off this episode with. And really, to be honest, I mean, I didn't surf at all, so that's probably it didn't help the cause.
no, I think I've definitely dropped the Mick Fanning name a few times over the summer holidays, because if I ever speak to people about the podcast, usually the first thing they say is like, "Got any big names coming up? Got any? What do you got coming up? Any interesting people?" I was like, "Well, we've got lots of cool people coming up, but Mick Fanning coming up." Oh, really? Yep. Mick Fanning. You can talk about punching the shark. Yep. No, he does talk about that. He talks about other stuff as well. But yeah, no, I've definitely used it to my advantage.
Yeah, I was just searching for some kind of anecdote all summer holidays down the beach. I mean, I did see a funny conversation take place at the beach. That's something.
Hang on, is this about Mick Fanning or is this?
No, just beaches in general.
Yeah.
I'm trying to link to today's episode.
Beach. I was at a beach.
No, it was a really lovely moment. I saw the biggest ever disconnect between Gen Z and an elderly lady. It was at a cafe at the beach, and the girl, it was busy and she was quite frantic taking people's orders, and this lady went to order her coffee, and the lady would have been probably early 90s, I think, and she ordered her coffee, and then the girl, the Gen Z, who would have been probably 17, 18, said, "And your name, please, just for the coffee." And the lady said, "Bethel." And the Gen Z girl said, "Oh, sick name." Sick name. And poor Bethel goes, "I beg your pardon." She goes, "It's a sick name." She goes, "My name is." And this lady stood there and then the Gen Z girl didn't even realise that what she'd done to this old lady.
Yeah.
And she just turned around and she said, "Can we get that toasty out to table 4, please? Next, thanks." And just looked over Bethel's shoulder. And poor Bethel wandered off and stood in the corner, completely bemused.
I mean, to be fair, it is a pretty sick name. Like, objectively speaking, it's a pretty sick name. Bethel. You don't hear many new Bethels. There's not many Bethels coming through. Maybe that's on the way back.
Oh, gosh. It was a wonderful moment. It was so good to watch. But anyway, that is my beach anecdote.
Good.
Before we jump into Mick
Okay, Bridge, file that in the beach anecdote section of our
It
podcast.
happened at a cafe near a beach. It wasn't even on a beach.
No, it was. It was
been
the kiosk at Anglesey
been any
Beach.
cafe.
At the beach.
Ah,
so,
okay.
so technically does.
I had no shoes on and my feet were in the sand when I ordered. A beach kiosk.
Oh, no, very good. Nice
Short,
and
but
short.
sweet.
Yeah. And good to mention
It
Gen
was
Z.
sweet. It was sweet.
Yeah.
And good to mention Gen Z.
Yeah, very good to
Yeah.
mention Gen Z. And sick anecdote, actually, while we're throwing out sick anecdote.
But Mick Fanning, we did have this conversation with him at the end of last year, and I've just been thinking about it so much. He didn't know a lot about the podcast, it's fair to say, when he came in, and why would he? But it was really nice to see him work it out pretty quickly. And I mean, what he's been through in his life, I don't even understand how someone works through or navigates that.
Well, it was so raw, and I really love it when we have someone on the show who completely, not exceeds, but like goes against what your expectations are or your perceptions are of who they are. And I didn't know much about Mick at all. Now we're obviously really, really close, but I didn't know much about him before, and yeah, the way he talks about what he's gone through is I was not expecting.
So as you're about to hear, the extraordinarily tragic part of Mick's story is that his three brothers have all died. We do go into a little bit of detail with the death of his brother Sean, and then we don't really talk about the other two, the details. And to be really honest, the reason we don't is I, as an interviewer, just got quite nervous and apprehensive about asking someone to. I just found it felt like a really hard question to ask to ask more details on his other brothers.
Yeah,
passing.
I was the same. Yeah.
And also he speaks so beautifully about the way he connects to his brothers now that they've passed and are no longer here. It felt a bit icky or something to then go, go into the details of exactly what happened.
Mm.
Yeah, it just didn't feel right in the moment. But
he is so generous in how he
totally
talks about
unbelievable, unbelievable. And so I guess now we just want to give you the details of what happened.
Bit of context.
A bit of context to what's happened to Mick's life, because it really paints a picture of what an incredibly resilient and extraordinary man he really is. So in 1998, Mick lost his older brother, Sean. They were at a party after a surfing competition that Mick had done really well in, and Mick decided to walk home from the party, and his older brother, Sean, was in a car, and there was a car accident. He was killed that night. Another one of his older brothers, Peter, died in 2015 of a heart complication. And then in 2024, Ed, so very recently, Ed, his brother...
was in March last year, I think.
In March last year, I believe, cut his foot on some coral and became infected and then ended up causing a cardiac issue, and he passed away. So he's, I mean, I shudder to think to the places he has been with all that, and I think about his parents as well, but my gosh. So yeah, just want to give you the context on why we just feel Mick is so extraordinary.
Yeah. He's so sort of laconic and iconic in the way he talks. It's surprising to see that he's gone through that much tragedy so close with the way he talks. But there's so much vulnerability and honesty. It's such an incredible chat.
Yeah. And what shone through for me was just what an incredible example of what humanity should be about and how much he gives back to, I was going to say his community, but just the world. He really gives back so much on so many levels. So we hope you enjoy this chat with Mick. We love him. We would like to claim to be friends with him, but yeah, we're working on it.
I can only imagine how many people he told over the holidays about coming on our podcast. He must have been really milking that, just like we were.
Anyway, Mick Fanning.
Well, it's not every day. It'd be weird if it was, but it's not every day that we get to meet one of the best people who has ever done the thing that they do.
Yeah.
And today, we're very, very lucky to have Mick Fanning right here.
Howdy.
How do you respond to that?
Oh, Mick, I mean, this is I'm so excited.
Thanks. No, thanks for having me.
Three-time world champion surfer, for those of you who, everyone knows, I don't need to say that.
I mean, I'm sort of like, I don't know how or when to ask about the shark, and I feel like, you know,
Rip off the Band-Aid, man.
but it's like we'll get to it at some point. But it's like if I was tuning in listening to Mick Fanning, I was like, talk about the shark.
I just feel like you've had so many dreams come true, but you've also had so many nightmares come to reality, and it's just it's extraordinary. It's an incredible journey. So I guess we'll get to them all in good time. I think for me, I'd love to start with your childhood and hear about what it was like for you as a kid growing up. I have this picture in my head of, like, when I'm picturing blonde hair and surfing and just mayhem.
Yeah, it's pretty much mayhem. No, look, I guess it's like where it all started. My parents are migrants from Ireland and England. They moved over. They were part of what they call the 10-pound Poms. So the flight was £10. They only had to have £100 in each bank account.
Must have been Jetstar or something.
Maybe Ryanair.
Yeah, Ryanair. Yeah.
And so they had my sister at the time, so they flew over, landed in Perth, and then they decided, my dad was like, nah, we're not living here. drove across the Nullarbor and set up in Penrith, and had the rest of us boys.
Where were you, sorry, in the order of things?
I'm the last of five.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm the youngest. And when I was young, my parents got divorced, and then I moved up to Coffs Harbour with the rest of my brothers, my sister.
Do you have memories of the divorce at all? Or
No, it wasn't. I was still pretty young.
Yeah.
Like the only thing I really remember from the Penrith days was playing on the trampoline, going to the shops, and watching Roger Ramjet on the TV. That's it.
That's all pretty good stuff.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
So-
I remember Roger Ramjet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So life sort of started in Coffs Harbour for me. And yeah, from there, that's when my brothers fell in love with surfing. Because I was the youngest, they were like, you've got to come. We're not, someone's got to look after you and you'll come to the beach. And we're like, okay, cool. And they pretty much, it was baptism by fire and surfing. They just took me out and said, get in. And then from there, we moved up to Ballina, and there for the rest of my primary school days. My brothers got right into surfing then. My middle brother, Ed, he was like chasing the Pro Junior Tour and trying to make a career out of it.
So surfing, at this point, I'm guessing surfing was just in your household, it's everything.
Everything, yeah. Our house was sort of like an unofficial clubhouse. My mum always had this theory, like we didn't have the most money in the world, but she always said, if I have a nice house and it's near the beach, my boys would be out of trouble. It didn't work for some of them, but we'd have like at any given time, we'd have anywhere between 10 and 20 kids in our house,
Really?
just stacking their boards there, all going surfing together. And it was fun. It was really, really fun. And really good memories. And being the youngest, I was sort of looked after, not only by my brothers, but the older boys that were around, and sort of learnt the hierarchy and, who to respect and who to, talk shit to. And
What's the age difference?
my sister's 12 years older. My next brother was 9 years, then 6, and then 3.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Very consistent.
Yeah, so it must have been good few years, everything. Never asked mum and dad that one.
Every 3 years, let's get together.
Yeah. I'll come home from the pub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just sounds like,
Heaven.
yeah, it just sounds so good. Like so Josh and I are brothers, and we grew up in Leafy Ball in the suburbs of Melbourne, and we knew a guy across the road sort of called Michael, but that was like, sometimes I'd say good day to him and that felt pretty cool, but
I mean, we had an obsession with our obsession was cricket, and that was like just everything we did in our house. And I like the playing backyard cricket with you is some of the happiest memories of my life. But we never had. I mean, if I could just like multiply that with more people coming around to do it, it would just be heaven. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, it was good times. It
Yeah.
was good times. Probably stressed mum out a bit, but it was great.
I feel like and I don't have kids, but whenever I'm at a place that's near a beach and I see like kids playing at the beach, I always think like, if you can, like what a genius move to move somewhere near a beach, because for kids, it's like there's always an activity.
Yeah, it's special. Like I'm in that realm right now, taking my kids down the beach, and it's so cool to watch them explore not only the sand and everything around, like rocks, crabs, worms, burying toys, and then getting my son on a board and going out, and he's asking about whales, sharks, dolphins, fish, like when we're trying to catch waves. It's really cool to sort of share that world with them. And to be honest, like those days make me way more excited than whatever I did growing up, in the surfing world. It was like, this is it. This is my world title dream right here. So
Really?
yeah.
Is that what you expected? Did you expect to love being a dad so much?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, as my mates have probably had kids a lot earlier than what I did, and I see the joy in them and stuff, and they're like, it's the best feeling in the world. And I'm like, well, shit, I surf. Like,
Yeah.
I get to travel around the world.
World champion.
I do some pretty freaking cool things. And that, to me, is the best thing in the world. And then when I had my son, and it was like, all right, I get it now. It's like, you know, the best thing in surfing is to get barreled. And it's like, imagine putting all the barrels together in one that you ever had in one day, and then times it by a billion. That's what it's like having a kid. Yeah, like the stoke level is just out of this world, and you can't not smile for weeks. It's awesome.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, until you get really tired, and then you don't know what's going on.
Which is when you get dumped. That's when you feel like you've been dumped pretty badly.
Wipe out.
Which, to be honest, is my experience of both surfing and parenting more than anything. But were you and your brothers competitive, or was it just is surfing more about you go out and you sort of run your own race?
Oh, no.
Okay.
We were so competitive.
Really?
Yeah. With everything. It was pretty funny. Like, two of my brothers had brown hair, and then me and my middle brother, we were, pure blonde.
Yeah.
And so I would fight my brother that was 3 years older. He would punch me, and then the next brother would come in. He would punch him, and then the oldest brother would come in and punch him. And by the end of it, the two middle ones were crying, and me and the older one were laughing.
When you say punch, like, how serious are the fights?
Yeah, a few trips to hospital with stitches and stuff.
Really?
Yeah, no, we were. There was no holding back.
And it was just your mum looking after you?
Yeah,
Wow, that's a lot for your mum.
Yeah, we put her through hell. But she's a strong woman. We call her the lioness. So yeah, she's very protective of her pride, and she was extremely strong woman, and yeah, she didn't take shit.
I can't. Well, I don't think you could raising you guys.
No.
That's Liz, isn't it? Your mum's
Liz, yeah.
I've seen a couple of interviews with her, and I love. She's incredible to listen to as well. Just but I'll get to more of that a bit later on. So, when did you realise that you were really fucking good at surfing?
Yeah, that's another funny story. It was almost like a sliding doors effect. We had just moved to the Gold Coast, and I was so into soccer. Like, I loved soccer.
How old are you at this
I
point?
was 12.
Right.
And like, we won the state titles as young kids in soccer and stuff like that. So I was all about soccer.
Jeez.
My dream was to go and play in England and all that kind of stuff. And when we moved to the Gold Coast, we went to sign up for soccer, and we ended up going the wrong day. No one was there.
Oh.
And I was gutted. I was so gutted. But my brother Sean was in the car, and we were going to go to the beach straight after, and we're going to meet he was going to meet the guys from Quicksilver to potentially get sponsored.
Whoa.
And I went surfing as well, and I've come in before him, and two guys came up, and they're like, hey, we're from Quicksilver. And I was like, oh, you're looking for my brother, as if they knew who I was. And they're like, what, your brother? And and they're like, well, we're going to sponsor him, and we'll sponsor you too. I was like, what? How cool's that? I've never gotten anything free from soccer. And
And that's the day you were supposed to be signing up to soccer.
yeah, and then never went and signed up at soccer, and just surfed ever since.
And Quicksilver's soccer division isn't big from what I know about Quicksilver.
Yeah. There's a few soccer players that love surfing, but then that's about as close it gets.
Yeah.
Picturing the head of like Australian Football Federation right now listening, going, "Oh, for fuck's sake!"
Never take a day off. Wow, that's incredible sliding door.
Yeah.
And also at 12 years old, to get a sponsorship from Quicksilver is mad.
Yeah, it was so mad. Like, as I said before, we didn't have the most money in the world. Like, my mum would go and buy clothes from like Target or whatever, and she would save all the Billabong badges or the Quicksilver badges, and she would sew them on for us. So
wow. That is
we could,
beautiful.
yeah, so we could fit in, and so when I've got a free T-shirt and a free pair of boardies, I was like,
So what did the sponsorship? Is it just free clothes? Is that how it
So
works?
at that point, it was just I think my allowance over summer and winter. You get 2 packs, and you had $500 worth of clothes and wetsuits.
Jeez, that's a lot of in the 90s, early
yeah,
90s.
it was early to mid 90s.
500 would go a long way back then.
Yeah, I had like 4 shirts and 3 shorts and
Sick.
2 weddies. I was pumped.
I'm just picturing this guy at high school, like a year 7 kid sponsored by.
Yeah.
Just like, well, here's the coolest guy in the school.
Yeah, maybe for about 3 seconds, because then Dean Morrison and Joel Parkinson came to school. And
At your school?
Yeah. So,
my.
and they were getting paid to go surfing. So I was like, oh, shit, I'm a level below those guys.
It's a big
It's a
school.
pretty good surfing school.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. It also this made me realize that's basically, you've spoken on the podcast before about when you played like Oz kick footy and you wanted to be, you were like.
This is not really a comparable story.
No, but I'm just saying.
Let's hear it out.
Yeah. No, it's a random thing to bring up. But I've
This is
realised
the time
that
that Quicksilver didn't sponsor me.
But he's like, Mick's lived your dream as a child, that
Yes.
dream you had of like playing Oz kick.
True.
And someone like the footballer from the AFL who comes to watch going, Ryan, you are so good at this that we're going to give you an early contract at Essendon already.
Except Mick was not thinking that. Mick didn't give a shit. Whereas like I'm playing footy as an 11-year-old, hoping that like Tony Lockett will see me and go like, you got something, kid. I'm going to call the head of the AFL and get you a sponsorship.
Yeah.
Get you in the club level.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those congratulations. I would love that to happen to me.
Commiserations.
Thanks, Mick.
And so you knew then that you were pretty good.
I guess I just sort of, from there was just that sort of just took over my life. It was just, got the bug of surfing. I started doing more contests and sort of surfing against guys like Parker and Dean Morrison and I wasn't beating them, but I was making the finals with them. I was like, well, they're obviously going to be pro surfers. So if I keep trying really hard, then hopefully my hard work would catch up to their talent,
This is going to sound like a really broad and obvious question, but I'm genuinely interested because I've like had a surf lesson once in my life. But what is it that you love about surfing?
The ocean is forever changing, and it's not so much a sport; it's more like a lifestyle. Like I wake up and first thing I do is look and see what the ocean's doing for the day, and that's how I try and plan my day.
And is that like on an app, or are you literally going to the ocean to have a look?
No, I'm looking out the window, and
Because you probably live right on the water. I'm assuming.
I'm one of the lucky ones.
You've got a house floating on a surfboard.
Yeah, we just floats in and out with the tide. I think for me, it's a time for me that it's where I concentrate on me. I concentrate on what I do in the ocean, but then also too the feeling of exercise, the endorphins you get from that, and then being in the ocean. That I sort of look at it as it just washes the emotions clean and starting again, almost like baptism in a way.
Wow. The baptism's a really interesting idea about it. There's also, it feels like there must be something very humbling about surfing in that so many other sports, an athlete would have a certain amount of control over everything. I imagine take a lot of blame on themselves for like, I didn't run that race the way I could have, and or I could control as an athlete in that sport, in say athletics, I can control so much of this. Whereas you as you said, it's changing all the time. It must be a very humbling thing to have to work with an ever-changing element to perfect your craft. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think there's nothing more humbling than Mother Nature. You can go from hero to zero just like that.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of surfing also. It also teaches you that you can only control the controllables. You can't control the uncontrollables. And the one thing is, especially, you're competing, all you can do is your best. You can't do any more than your best. And so I always had this thing is like, all right, I'm going to try and do my best every time I go out and compete. And if I win, I win. If I lose, I lose. That's okay. But if I know I've tried my best, then I can put my head on the pillow at night and be okay. You know, you don't have that replay going over and over again, and that served me well in you know, outside of the water as well. Is like, you know, what's done is done, and
Did I give it my best
yeah,
shot?
did you try your best, or did you half-ass it? And I think that's probably the times where you're probably playing that over again, is when you know you've half-assed it. Yeah, so that's a big one for me. It's like, if I'm going to do something, I got to do it right.
Yeah.
Can you remember a time where you did half-ass it and you got to the end of the day and you're like, didn't do my best?
Yeah. I actually had a really big wake-up moment. 2004, I tore my hamstring off the bone, and you know, I had to get surgery, and I was just sitting on the couch, depressed at home. And I remember watching a replay of one of the events from the year before, and when I was in the actual heat, I felt like I got absolutely smashed. And then I watched the heat, and I was like, I wasn't that far behind. But what it was, I remembered 2 nights before that heat, I was out partying, and I just had this immense guilt come over me, and I was just like, that was the perfect example of me half-assing it and taking things for granted. And I vowed to myself I never wanted to feel that guilt ever again. And so, yeah, then I went into this other psycho.
You went the other way.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was a big thing for me. I knew I half-assed it, and I wanted to never feel that feeling again.
Wow, that's kind of a gift. So having that moment of seeing that and going through that, and also in what would have been a pretty shit circumstance of not being able to surf, and it sounds like your mental health wasn't great at that point, sitting there thinking about what's next. It's weird how a gift can come out of such a low time.
Yeah, for sure. Like, you know, there's always that saying, especially in sport, like, there's always a reason for an injury. And mine was because I was taking surfing for granted and not giving my all. And yeah, that was the time that it was like, you can go one of two ways. Like, I didn't know if I was going to surf again because no one had that injury before. But then also too, it was like, well, if I do get back, then you better give it your all, mate, or otherwise you're just going to be like one of those other coulda, shoulda, woulda beans, you know. So yeah, it was a really big turning point.
I've had the identical injury as you. I've had the exact same one, slightly less cooler circumstances than surfing. I was dropping a catch at backward square leg and snapped the hamstring off the bone. Nowhere near as cool. I had to drive from Sale to Melbourne by myself that night. It was horrific. So I know the exact pain. It's really bad.
It's not the funnest. Yeah, I had to sail for 24 hours and then catch 3 flights home.
Okay, well,
not to one up you, but
4 up.
Yeah, you can't sit on your ass for a long time. It hurts.
Yeah. No, I had.
Sorry, I had to drive from Sale, mate.
He had to actually sail.
Amazing. Is it time?
Well, I just had one thing I wanted to ask about childhood, because it's like your childhood is just like roaring towards this the most exciting and joyful and successful crescendo almost. Everything's just incredible. And I come to the competition, but you surfed in a competition, I think it was in 1997 or maybe 1998, and you won, or you were nominated as like recognised as the best junior surfer in the country, maybe in the world. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, tragedy strikes in the most awful. So now we don't have to talk about this as well, by the way. It's totally up to you. So Josh and I, as we're brothers, our sister was really, really sick when we were growing up, and to the point where there's a couple of weeks where it was kind of touch and go. And ever since that moment, I've had this horrific fear or nightmare of losing a sibling. It's just like, and you experience that as a 17, 18-year-old. And I can't even begin to imagine what that does to you in your life at that point. That must have been just horrific.
Yeah. It was sort of, I guess it almost ripped the heart out of the community for us. the Coolangatta community was really, really tight knit. And for me personally, yeah, obviously totally gutted. But I had to grow up, and I had to grow up really fast overnight. I was a boy, and then had to grow into a man pretty much overnight, where I was the first one that got told in the family.
Wow.
It was a car accident, is that
Yeah,
right?
it was a car accident. And yeah, Sean, who was 3 years older than me, he passed. And so I got picked up by detectives and 2 of the older guys in the community. And like these 2 guys, I thought, they were hard men. And, I was thinking, I saw them with police, and I was like, they're like, Mick, and I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm going to my mate's house. I'm not getting involved with whatever you're doing. And then get in the car, and 2 of the hardest men in the community sitting there next to me, and they had to tell me what had happened. And yeah, I had to go home. I had to wake up my mum, tell her the news,
Oh, God.
get on the phone, ring my dad. And luckily my other 2 brothers were with my dad at the time. They were all drinking together, and had to tell them. And then I had to ring my sister who was in London at the time. And so it felt like on my side, I was the rock for the family in a way.
Gosh.
Because I knew everything, and everyone was trying to protect me, and I was like, no, I need to get down. I need to see the place. And they're like, no, you're not going. And
you wanted to go where the
I
accident...
wanted, yeah, I just needed to see it to believe it. And yeah, and then it was weird. It was, people would be coming around to the house, and I actually really hate these words, but everyone in those situations, because you don't know what to say to someone, everyone just says, be strong. And I took it as literally what, no emotion, no anything.
Right.
And so I created this wall and showed zero emotion. And yeah, where everyone is coming to me and crying on my shoulder, I didn't feel like I went and had, I had my closest friends, but I didn't want to burden them with my emotions because I knew how it made me feel. And so I just put up this wall. I wouldn't talk to anyone about it. I wouldn't tell anyone the real story. And yeah, I held that on for a long time. That was, the last day that I was a boy, and just, had to man up from then on.
And how internally, how was your mental health in the weeks after, but then also, I guess, the couple of years after that as well?
The weeks leading, I was really, really dark. I didn't want to surf. I didn't want to see people. I would sit in my room. At the time, I had this really dark room, and I would just sit in there and just, do nothing. But I wouldn't show, as I said, I wouldn't show people emotion during the day or when I'd see them or whatever. But when I'd get into my dark room, that's when it all came out.
Mm.
It's one of those things, like people say that time heals and stuff like that, but you never lose that initial pain. You just learn how to navigate the emotions as you go through, and that's pretty much what I had to learn and deal with. So yeah, it was not the easiest ride for a 17-year-old kid, but I feel like I felt like my brother was riding with me for the rest of my life, and
Right.
yeah.
Because surfing is it seemed to be a very spiritual experience. I'm sure you feel a connection to him through the water and through surfing.
Yeah, it was like I was carrying him with me, and every time I'm surfing or whatever, I'm talking to him.
Really?
Yeah, like some people talk to, I don't know, Zeus or, wave gods, Huey or whatever, but I would find myself talking to Sean a lot.
Is that this may be a silly question, but do you mean out loud, literally talking, or is it just more internally?
Just internally,
Yeah, okay,
yeah.
right.
Yeah. And then, you talk about spirituality. At times I would feel his presence with me.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Oh, I just got massive goosebumps then.
And I would feel it was almost like I'll get this burst of energy, like crazy energy, like, doing things that I normally couldn't do. And I was very clear in what I was doing. And so that was something that I knew he was with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it sort of gave me that extra little bit of confidence. And then when my eldest brother, Peter, passed away, I knew when he was with me because it was a totally different feeling. It was really, he was mischievous and full of energy and just, full character. But when he's around, crazy calm, very calm. And so, it was.
So it's Peter. When Peter was around, you felt calm.
Yeah, felt really calm when Pete was around. So it was, I can sort of differentiate who's with me at the time. And now with Edward just passing, I'm still trying to figure out what he feels like. But I know he's around. I think he's more looking after my kids.
Wow.
Yeah, because I don't know, they
Like the older brother.
Yeah, it seems like when when he gets brought up or whatever, the kids change a little bit. They go almost not internally quiet, but they sort of just center. And so I don't know. I'm as I said, I'm still working through that. It's only still really fresh and raw in that sense. So just trying to learn how to navigate that one.
To have loved and lost 3 siblings, I can't. I don't know what to say to that, but the strength you must have. I mean, I know people in your position will go, "Well, I don't really have a choice," but just to acknowledge.
No, thanks.
That.
Yeah.
Your mum said in an interview, she said, "It's really, I loved it so much." She said, "Mick is a beautiful, beautiful man." And she paused and she said again, "He's a beautiful man." And I feel like these experiences kind of add to the beauty in a way of you and your story.
Maybe she was talking internally, not externally.
I'm sure as a mum, she
you don't wish it upon anyone, but you have 2 ways to go. You can either sit in that sadness and that depression and make that your identity, or the way I went about it was I want to celebrate them. And, when people bring them up and talk about them, I want to talk about the good times. I want to talk about the laughter and, beating each other up as kids. That those things are hilarious to me. And, we had a really fun life together. And so they're the moments that I want to cherish. Like I don't really want to know about the death or whatever, because that didn't define who they were.
Yeah.
It was who they were as people that I try and celebrate.
I don't, without wanting to glorify violence, but have you got a funny beating up story about your brothers?
Oh, yeah. Probably the most memorable one that we're all together. Me and Sean came home from school and, we're, it was disgusting. But we started having this spit fight in the house. I fully
like spitting on each other.
Spitting on each other, yeah. Like it started off as just like, and then it turned into full gollies. And well, she wasn't home. Mum was off working, so she could pay the rent. And got to a point where Sean got me so good with a golly straight in the eye, and I lost it, and I just punched him. And then he's like, "I'm not taking that," and he just started laying into me. As he's laying into me, Ed walks through the door, and Ed's like, "You can't hit him; he's too small." And so Ed came in, crack Sean, and they were going at it, and Sean's calling the police, and
The police?
he was a bit of a dramatic.
Well, the cops, I think, then did have a spit division. I think that's in that particular film.
So he's got beat up by Ed, and then for the one time that Pete lived with us as well, he just walked up from his room and he just sees Ed laying into Sean. He's like, "You can't do that. He's too small." And so he's just grabbed Ed and just punched Ed straight in the mouth.
Whoa.
And Ed had pretty bad teeth, and he had this one fang, and it just went straight through his lip.
Oh.
And and 10 minutes later, Mum walks through the door. Ed's just bleeding, needs stitches. By that time, me and Pete are just laughing at them two. So
then how long does it take? Like, is it like hours, days, or weeks until you're all laughing at that?
it was the next morning at breakfast, yeah. Ed wasn't laughing because he couldn't eat breakfast. Wow. That's like, in the moment, it's like all hell's broken loose, but we all laugh about it at the end.
A very dear friend of Josh and mine, a guy called Scotty Gordon, who's an incredible surfer, a wonderful guy. He said to us to ask you about, he's right into his surfing, and to be quite frank, he's right into you. He said to ask you about a dolphin that was with you on a certain
world title.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And we don't know what that is, but we...
Yeah. You ready to get weird? No. No, it was my first world title. We're in Brazil. And
2007?
It was 2007. I had the opportunity to clinch the world title at that event, and it was weird. Every time I would go and surf a heat, there'd be a dolphin in the channel. And it was around the time when all the stuff came out of Japan about the dolphin killings and all that sort of stuff. And, the internet was new, and that's how you sort of started making everything go viral. And I got it sent to me, so I just sent it to my whole inbox. And I, at the time, I was like, oh, it just must be a dolphin come to say thanks for sending an email.
Because that would make sense.
Yeah, 100%. And then
you're welcome.
And then the day went on. History has a 01, but when I went in, one of the filmers came up to me, and he's like, "Did you see the dolphin?" I was like, "Yeah, I saw it every heat." He goes, "That dolphin would only show up in your heat and would disappear as soon as you went in." And he's like, "Do you think it's your brother?" And I was like, "I don't know." But a media person was right there. Just
okay.
went,
right.
But yeah, look, it could have been.
Yeah.
Could have been my brother. Or it could have been a dolphin just saying thanks for the email.
Both equally possible.
Yeah.
That's so interesting, because has your experiencing the loss you've experienced and the grief and obviously the amount of thinking, it's such a unique, tragically unique experience. Do you think your spirituality has changed as a result? Like, do you think, would you have thought that the dolphin could possibly be representing someone before?
Look, my mum's pretty spiritual in that side of it. And like her favorite thing in the world was walking along the breakwalls in Ballina and seeing the dolphins and stuff like that. But yeah, she was always, we weren't really big on religion. It was more spirituality. And for me, I sort of feel like, I don't want to get too weird on you all, but I feel like the energy just stays in the universe. And, they might come back as reincarnated. They might not. They might just be cruising around and just checking in on different people. And so, yeah, it was definitely, it wasn't one of those moments where I was like, am I being crazy here or something like that? But yeah, it's just sort of take it as it is, and it could have been a person, might not have been. Well, could have just been a dolphin checking out surfing. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's such a nice thought though to think of it like that, as that someone's energy stays in the universe.
yeah. Well, I just you sort of talk about souls and stuff like that. It's all just energy, like, and so energy makes the world go around and the universe. So I figured that's just my theory on it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful quote by Nick Cave that I'm probably going to butcher here, but he talks about because he's suffered an unimaginable loss of losing a son or two sons now, and I've heard him recently interviewed, and he talked about grief and trauma and they going through that experience, and some of what you said before to me echoed his sentiment, and he talked about how you can choose to harden around that grief and go inwards, and you were talking about that choice of it's easy to go down that path of being very depressed, and he's like, that is a coping mechanism, and he's like, it's a totally valid one, but he described it as a really dangerous one. It can be incredibly isolating, and then he speaks about how for him it allowed him to look outwards and see the collective trauma and grief that's experienced by humans everywhere, and it can be a really connecting experience to the rest of the world. And hearing you speak, it seems like that might ring true.
Yeah, for sure. Like, people might look at me and say, yeah, you've been through some hell, and yeah, I have. But there are other people out in the world that have lost as much or more than me. Like, I look at my parents, I'm like, if I lost one of my kids, like, that's the scariest thing in the world, and they've lost 3 kids. And I see them with each loss. I see a little bit more of them die, and it's hard, and there's wars in the world, and people sort of don't think people, you get stuck in your own world in a sense, but man, there's so much more tragedy out there, and it's like life is a roller coaster. You got to take the good with the bad, and I guess one enlightening moment for me was I was in Africa. I was in Rwanda, and I was being a sook actually. I was like, just sick of driving, sick of flying, and just was like crying, poor me. And then I see this group of kids playing with a Coke bottle, a plastic Coke bottle, weren't in the best clothes, they're dirty, and they were having so much fun, so much fun. And I was like, they have the tiniest bit of what I have, and here I am, crying, poor me. It's like, fucking grow up, and be grateful for what you have, and just try and give it more. It doesn't mean that I don't have days where I still go poor me. But when I look in the mirror, it's like there's people out there with a lot worse off situations than I do. And so I've got to be very grateful for all the great things that I have, and not dwell on the bad.
Beautifully said. I've heard some stories about what you did during the floods in 2022 up north.
2022 floods, yep.
Would you mind describing what you guys were doing up there? And then I'll ask some questions off the back of it maybe, but it'd be interesting to hear. Yeah,
so it sort of started, obviously, the rains came down, and there was like Armageddon style stuff. And how it started was Parko and a couple of mates just went down the river on jet skis just to check it out, just to have a look. And then the next thing they know, they're pulling people out of houses. They're, they're saving people from, these floods. And I was at home making sure my family was safe and all that kind of stuff. And then a text came through that night from Parker and goes, "Hey guys, we need to get back down there tomorrow." He said he pulled like anywhere between 15, 20 people out of houses just on his jet ski. And he said there's so many more people down there that need help. And so the next day, a group of us guys that have jet skis in the surfing community, we said, all right, first light, let's just jump on the skis and we'll just head up the river and just see what we can find. And it was next level. We didn't realize like what started as what we thought might have been, go up for a few hours and come home was the next thing went on for weeks. And
as in you were going there every day for weeks.
Yeah, so we would be going into these towns and you wouldn't even recognize them. Like I was on streets that I knew pretty well. I didn't know where I was. And it started off the first day, we were just going in and we're sort of relaying back to crew back home and texting our partners and stuff like that. These people don't have water, they don't have fuel, they don't have or anything for anything really, food. And so our partners back on land were like, all right, we've got to start setting up like a station where people can bring food, can bring water. And it just started snowballing like next level. Like what the girls did over the next week was like military came in and they're like, this is the best operation we've ever seen. Like, you don't want them on the opposite side of espionage. And yeah, we were just out there and we were just on phones when we could get reception, just like getting a pin or an address, like take water here. People were taking, we had one doctor that was stuck up in Mooloolaba. We had to go, one of the crew had to go get him, zip him back down to Tweed, get blood for a patient, otherwise the patient was dead, zip him back up to Mooloolaba on the ski, which was probably normally it's a 30, 35 minute drive. So on a jet ski up a river, just flooring it. A funny one was, I don't know if you know the Mad Who's, but Dean and Sean, they were in their boats and Sean had a woman that was just about to give birth. She was in labour and he's flying down the river and he sees his brother and his brother's waving to him and he's like, no, she's going to give birth. And he's like, just come check this out. And he goes over and he's like, I got a horse in the boat. And he's like, yeah, wow. Yeah, it was like,
oh my God.
It was wild.
It's a big few minutes.
Yeah. This was all in one day. And then we ended up like it went like, so day one, we were just trying to figure out, where everyone was, making sure people were safe, getting them to dry land if they wanted to get out of there. And then the next day was like we were up the river to Mooloolaba and we had barges and boats bringing food and water, fuel. I had the girl who owns the pharmacy. I got her up the river so she could get the pharmacy open to get medication to people that needed medication. And I ended up creating this hub in Mooloolaba and I'm directing police officers like this food needs to go here, this water needs to go there. The hospital had no food, no water or anything like that. So we're, supplying them. And these are just regular civilians and we're directing like people who shouldn't be in the know of what's going on. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And like next thing we're doing helicopter runs. Like I'm ringing up pilots and trying to organize pilots. Like I'm hiring off my own money, just hiring helicopters to go and drop food to people that haven't had anything in 5 days. And it was just like, as I said, the girls they were getting all the comms and they were like just sending out addresses. And this
to the helicopters,
to boats, to cars, and it was wild. It was so crazy. Whoa. And then we finally the sort of the rain stopped and we had water dissipate enough where the people in our sort of like Tweedshire were safe enough. But then we started hearing of down the coast, like past Ballina and Lismore, Coracai and Evans Head and, Broadwater, that area, they were only getting all the water that was up at Lismore and they're getting hammered and they're like, no one's coming to save them. And so the team that we assembled, they just jumped on the highway and would drive as far as they possibly could. They've never been to these towns before. And as soon as the water came up to where they couldn't drive anymore, just throw the jet skis and boats in and just started doing the same thing down there. And it was a crazy, crazy operation. And it was a really emotional one. I guess a lot of the women sort of, they didn't get the satisfaction of going and seeing the elation of people, you getting picked up or you giving them food or water or something.
That interaction.
And they were just like, some of them didn't even know where their kids were for 5 days because they were so locked in to making sure that these people were safe or had something. And because it's life and death situations, it was so wild.
I mean, I know it's like probably super high emotion, and I know this is, and I don't mean to be like, but I know this is not the right question to ask necessarily, but if I was like in my house and needed saving and you rocked up, I'd be like, oh my God, that's Mick Fanning. Did you have any strange...
We had a couple of moments like that and then it's just like, actually, because they would recognise the Red Bull ski. And so they would see the Red Bull ski coming up and they're like, all right,
we got Mick.
Yeah, someone we sort of, they called us the Currumbin community pretty much. And that was the crew that sort of just kept going out. And so we were sort of like the first port of call that had food, water and all. And that and so it was wild. Like the whole community really got behind it all and really backed each other. And it was, the community spirit was so overwhelming. It was a really beautiful thing for such a tragedy.
That is incredible. But to layer it onto what I was saying before, to me, there could be a choice there of the hardening thing when the world has taken so much from you and your family, to then see something like this and go, another confirmation that the world's just fucked. Or to choose to look outward and to reach out and do things for other people. It's sort of a two-part question, but why is it important to reach out and strengthen those community bonds? And also, where does that come from in you? Where does that strength come from to go, no, we're jumping in, we're doing something here?
Probably the simplest answer is when I've ever gone through something terrible or something good, I've had a community behind me and I've had really good people to, lift me up. And so I pay homage to those people by, if something happens and I have the opportunity to help someone else, I've got to do it. Because I'm paying respects to those who have helped me. So that's where it comes from. Plus my mum's a nurse, so I've got to help people. But that's the biggest, that's probably the simplest answer is, paying respect to those who have helped me.
It's a beautiful answer and a beautiful kind of life philosophy about having, or a way to live, having community around you in your best and worst moments.
Yeah. And as you said, that's life. It's not all sunshines and rainbows.
Yeah.
And you know who your real friends are and in those situations. And I'm lucky enough that my friends have never wavered. And if they need anything from me, then they know who to call. So,
Incredible. Beautiful.
Ryan's I'm keen to chat about the shark attack because
Well, I genuinely, I was like,
That's an easy one.
I was like, I know Mick's gone through so much, but I genuinely thought, well, the shark story is the one, like that's the story. But my mind has been changed now. but let's yeah.
well, it's just it's kind of like it is kind of an easier one, but also it did lead you to some pretty dark times off the back of that incident.
A little bit, yeah. Look, to be honest, that was the easiest thing I've been through. It was
The near-death experience.
Yeah, look, it was terrifying. Yeah, I won't deny that.
Yeah. Because I imagine most people know the story, but there will be people who aren't aware of what happened. Do you mind just explaining just as simply as you can?
Yeah. I was in a final of an event in Jeffreys Bay, South Africa, and the final had just started. Julian Wilson, who I was competing against in the final, had just caught a wave, and I was just sitting there, and I sort of was like, all right, I might just move down the point a little bit. And so I went to go and just sit up on my board and start paddling, and I just heard a splash behind me, and I was like, oh no. And next thing I know, I'm entangled with a shark, and it's bumped me. I'm trying to put as it's gone through, it got stuck in my leg rope, and so it's thrashing, and I'm trying to put my board between me and the shark, and then all of a sudden I just get this whack from the tail straight to the head, and get thrown back, and then the next thing was, I guess if you watch the footage, the wave comes up at that point, and no one knew what was happening. But
9
terrifying.
seconds, 9 seconds where you didn't know.
yeah,
Well,
felt
we
like
know.
9 hours.
Yeah.
And the shark had actually circled back and had bumped me, and then the last thing I saw was my board on its fin, just drifting off.
Oh, like stuck on its.
Yeah, and I was just drifting off, and I was just like, oh, it's on. And so I just started screaming and swimming, and then I was sort of like swimming in, and I was like, hang on, if this thing's going to come and eat me, if I just keep swimming away, it's,
Probably going to catch you.
yeah, it'll catch me and just eat me without a fight. It'd be easy. And so I thought in my brain, I was like, well, let's fight it. If we're going to go down, let's go.
Did you train and kick it and you just spat on it?
Yeah. I remember, yeah.
Right in the
I was like, no, I know how to get someone bigger. No. So I was just trying to get myself as high as I possibly could, so I could see it coming. And
You genuinely thought, let's fight it.
yeah, well, if you're going to fight or flight mode. So
Wow.
Jeez.
So you kind of like kick yourself up as high as you
yeah,
can.
you just try. In water polo, and they can get themselves so high, you're trying to do that. And luckily it didn't come back. And Julian was so courageous, and I don't know what he was thinking. I was telling him to go in, but he kept coming towards me, and
That's amazing. That
yeah, like the courage.
Yeah.
Like I always think about what would I do in that situation? Would I go or would I not? And
Sounds like you'd go.
I have
From
no
everything you've said
doubt.
today. Yeah.
you never know. I was having an off day. But yeah, like that courage that he showed was like next level.
Because I don't know what you actually it's more like just emotional support, really. Like when you get out there, I guess you're giving the shark another option. That's all you're really doing.
Yeah, almost. Or you're just sort of confusing it or whatever. And
Yeah.
But the sharks are powerful predators, and they know what they're doing, even before you see them. So,
So why do you think it didn't come back?
I don't think, like, from all the research that I've done, from all the different researchers that I've spoken to, I think it was just inquisitive. It was like, oh, what's this? I haven't seen this before. And it went to come and have a look at me, and then realized, like, last minute, oh, this isn't what I wanted to eat.
Yeah.
So it tried to pull out, but that's when it got caught in my leg rope. And so, yeah.
So if anything, I mean, it's kind of because I'm terrified of sharks, and it's a big part of why I like surfing. Terrifies me, the thought of going out there and knowing they could be there. But that, in a weird way, that kind of is comforting, knowing that it's actually not wanting to eat you, it's just checking you out.
Yeah. You know, there's been other footage of them coming up and checking people out, and then last minute just taking off, you know. And
That's not what they want.
And the people in the water don't know. Like, it's the drones that have caught it. Yeah. And so it happens a lot. But
I mean, the story I've heard is that you punched it.
I don't tell that part. It was just, to be honest, I was just like, when I was trying to get my board in there, I was just like swinging.
Yeah.
And and then, you know, you could take a moment back, you know, media again.
Yeah.
It's like, I punched it. I was just so high on adrenaline.
Yeah.
Got to the beach and I'm just bawling my eyes out.
So that's what interests me a lot. Was I watched it last night just before I went to sleep, which incidentally led to me dreaming about you for about 6 hours. But
what was I wearing?
Rip curl hoodie, full rip curl, right on brand.
No bets.
But I that's the thing that struck me was someone grabbed you as you were walking out of the water for an interview, and they said, how did you fight it off? And you just gave that answer, and then it became this. The guy, it was sort of funny, and so I felt you were forced into playing this like, I'm an Aussie who fights sharks, which wasn't really the narrative that was. I mean, you knew you were nearly killed, you could have died, and then that was kind of the vibe of it was you were this like crazy Aussie who fights sharks, but really, it then. For a while after that, you kind of struggled a bit. Is that right? Mental health?
I did, yeah. I guess, you know, once I had time to reflect, like even like an hour after, like I was so high, like my adrenaline was through the roof. And, you know, I got to get back to the contest site and I saw the footage and I saw it and I was like, whoa. Like I didn't think it was that big of a shark when I was in the moment. And then when I saw the size of it, I was just like, holy shit. And that's when it all sort of sunk in and I was like, oh no. And then I was doing okay and it's, you know, emotion hit me and stuff like that. But then it wasn't until I ran into a friend of mine who's a wife of one of the surfers on tour. I saw her and she's a mother and I just broke down. Everything just collapsed. I like almost fell down and that was like a big moment that I realized that shit, like that could have been it. And so, and then like the next day, you know, we sort of had a party and it was almost like a going to your own wake. Like 1 minute everyone's laughing, next minute everyone's crying. It was actually a really fun party.
So the weight of it kind of dawned on everyone. By that stage,
yeah. But and then, you know, I sort of woke up the next day and, you know, I was sort of moving around and I just wanted to go and just check the space and then there's camera crews everywhere and I was just like, I didn't really think much of it. I was like, oh, whatever. And so I did one interview and then I realized I just saw all these camera crews coming. I was like, oh, I've got to go. I've got to catch a plane. And I sat on the plane and woman's reading the paper next to me and she's like, how crazy is that? The kid almost got eaten by a shark in a surfing contest. And I looked over it and there I was on the front page of the paper. And I was just like, yeah, it's pretty heavy. Looked out the window and just started crying. I was like, oh, God.
Really?
Yeah. And
Wow.
so it was sort of a hard one to sort of like process and
How soon after it did you talk to your mum?
I spoke to my parents straight away. Mum was watching live stream, so
Oh my God.
because she had 9 seconds where I think she said, I thought he was gone. She said, when the wave came up, I thought I'd never see him again.
yeah. And so I spoke to her straight away, and then I rang my dad, woke my dad up in the middle. It was the middle of the night, and he goes, "Hey, how are you?" I'm good. Just letting you know, I almost got eaten by a shark. And he's like, "You okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, And he's like, okay, no.
Man, a few words.
Yeah. And then he woke up to the news in the morning. He's like, rings me back and goes, you didn't tell me it was that gnarly. I was like, I know, yeah, it was pretty wild. But yeah, it was sort of the weeks afterwards was the hardest. It would come back to me in dreams, and it was always anywhere from like 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. And I'd wake up just kicking the sheets off or whatever, and at that time I hadn't really had anyone to talk to, and I was trying to figure out like who do I talk to, and spoke to my sports psych guy, spoke to different doctors, and it wasn't until I spoke to a friend who's in the military, and he had a similar thing with like a landmine, and blew the car up, and so he's like, look, the way you look at it is if you see those signs, it's going to bring up emotion and stuff like that, but just know it's almost like when you almost get hit by a car crossing the road. You've still got to get on with life and still keep moving, and so that's how I've sort of looked at it. It's like it was an incident.
It doesn't mean anything. It's just a
it was just something that happened, and I was very fortunate, very lucky to get away with. But yeah, it shouldn't stop you from going surfing, and to be honest, like the first surf back, I was doing a piece for 60 minutes. They wanted to capture that first surf back, and they took me to a spot that was, a bit secluded, and I had my mate on jet ski, and I'm paddling out, and it'd been raining, and we're right near a river, and I sort of was paddling out, and I just see this fin.
No.
Yeah, and I'm just like, hey, Bearsy, like, is that a fin? I'm like, let me just jump on the ski for a second. And we sat out. He's like, nah, you're tripping. You're just making shit up now. And I'm like, no, just wait. Sure enough, saw a little shark fin come through.
Oh my God.
And we were laughing. Like it was like I wasn't scared.
Yeah,
it was
different
just,
sense of humour to me.
Yeah. We came in and I'm like, hey guys, I'm not making this up, but there's a shark out there. So we might want to wrap this up and go and surf somewhere else. And
Go and surf somewhere else. No, just call it quits for the next 10 years.
And then we found the most beautiful beach, no one around, crystal blue water, and felt totally fine.
Amazing.
Have you spoken to your mum about how she felt watching that footage, knowing that, she'd already lost a son and or in front of her very eyes watching her son do the thing that he loves more than anything? Have you asked her about that? Or?
Yeah. I didn't have to ask her; she just tells me.
Okay.
But yeah, she expressed everything, and I know, like I lived with Mum through those tragedies, and so yeah, I knew we didn't have to really talk about it. It was just more, acknowledging it, and she trusts me in what I do and the decisions I make. And so she was like, look, if you go back out, like you don't have to, but if you do go back out, then I trust you in what you do. And so it was just acknowledging her and acknowledging the family and but letting them know that I'm not going to do anything stupid on purpose, but just sort of just trust me in where I'm at. And,
This might be an impossible question to answer, but there's been a couple of moments throughout this incredible conversation where you've said through some of the darker times, and you've had many, that there's a choice to be made. What are the things that you do to help you make that choice, or what has helped you, even if you didn't realize you were doing it, to make the choice to keep going, sort of thing?
I guess it's almost sitting with it all and looking into the future in some way. If I take the bad path or the dark path, where's that going to lead me to? Is that going to lead me to alienating myself? Is that leading me to alcohol or drug depression? Is that going to lead me to doing something worse? Or look at the good path and say, find strength, better yourself, try and learn from mistakes, and just keep, as we always said at the start, just do your best. And yeah, looking at those two pictures, this one didn't look great to me. And so I was like, I'm just going to keep my best. And it's not going to be like, you walk through a door and it's green fields and stuff like that. It's more, it's going to take work. And with anything, you've got to work hard at getting through these situations. And, and there's definitely been times where I couldn't get out of bed. There's definitely been times where I was so deep and dark in depression where, I'd close up the room, didn't want to see anyone. But over the years, I've sort of been able to almost put a label on it. Like at the end of 2015, like I had the shark attack, had a marriage breakdown, and then my brother Peter passed away at the end of the year, and a picture that came to me was like, imagine like a giant barrel, like a keg, wooden keg sort of thing, and if it's filled with water, you're having a lot of fun. I looked in mine at the end of that year, and it was just bone dry. Like there was no light in it, there was no life. It was just empty, and I made a decision that I'm going to do things for me, do things that make me happy, and do things that I want to do to fill that barrel back up. And it took me a good couple of years. Yeah. But the barrel's pretty bloody full.
Beautifully said. It's a beautiful sentiment and such a realistic one that it's hard, and it's not going to happen straight away, but it's almost like reorientating yourself in a direction to get there.
Yeah. For sure. Like, and the other thing too is like, if you think of the barrel, you can't just pick up another whole barrel and fill it up in one go. It's either going to take a cup of, so many cups of water or a bucket of water, and you're going to have to keep going back to the source to fill it back up. So it's not going to change overnight, but you can take steps to fill that thing over time.
That is one of the best analogies I've heard when it comes to that.
And you love analogies.
I love analogies. I really like that one.
Create up my own. Like.
That's a ripper.
That's amazing. It's so true.
Yeah.
Did you ever get, like, if you don't mind me asking, professional help to do it? Like, did you ever have therapy along the way? Was that?
Yeah, I in 2009, I met a sports psychologist by the name of Michael Gervais. And he's like well renowned in the States, and it was funny, like the first time we ever met, I've walked into the Red Bull offices, and within half an hour I'm in his office bawling my eyes out. Like, I'd never told anyone the story about how Sean passed away. I'm bawling my eyes out. He's one of the first persons I've ever told. And I just felt with him, I was just so comfortable that I could tell him anything. And I don't use him in the therapy sense anymore. We're just mates. But yeah, he helped me a lot, not only with my craft of surfing, but also my mental health. And look, if you find that right person, like people say, go to a psychologist or go and do this, but you have to find someone that you connect with.
Absolutely.
What was it about him?
Don't know. I feel like there's some people that you just meet them and you feel like you can trust them.
Yep.
And you feel like you can, have a chat to them. Like even just sitting in this room with you guys, we only just met, but I feel comfortable enough to tell you real stories. Where if it was stoic and hard and whatever, I would have given you half the shit that, there's two different versions that I tell. And
You're saying we're lifelong friends now? Is
yeah,
that-
100%.
Cool. Cool.
I'm taking you surfing.
Oh, fuck. Oh, boy.
But yeah,
Buy a
yeah.
wetsuit.
You just, there's different people that you just
Mm.
can feel like you can trust from that initial onset. And that's probably trial and error as well.
Yeah, it was for me. I've seen a few psychs and had the first one was not good. Second one, I was just like, I don't see where this is going. Third one, from the get-go, I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is the person that I can share everything with and I can put it all out on the table. And it was life-changing. Yeah.
It's almost like going to a chiropractor. You know, some will just see you for 15 minutes and get you out the door. And you're like, well, how can I give me some tools so I don't have to come see you again? You know? And like I feel like if your psychologist isn't doing that, if you can't work on yourself at home and you're only in there for, if it's half an hour or whatever, and that's the only place that you do it, then it's going to take you forever.
Yeah.
So you need to find someone that gives you those tools and help you work on that at home.
Absolutely.
It sounds like Red Bull's a good place to facilitate your people's psychologists. So just call Red Bull and they'll just find someone for you.
Yeah. Just give them a call. I'll give you the number.
Great. Wow. This has been one of the most amazing chats. Genuinely, Mick. It's like I feel so lucky. To meet you, yes, but like to for you to tell all those stories, I feel really lucky. So thanks so much.
No, thanks.
Yeah. This has been just such a pleasure. Thank you for joining us today. And a conversation I think we'll never forget. So thank you so much for your
Thanks,
time.
guys. Thanks for having me. And
Thanks, Mick.
great to meet you. And mates for life now.
Yeah. Let's get our calendars out actually and lock in that surf.
Let's go.
Yeah, I'd love to do that before we forget. That would be
Thank you, mate.
Awesome.
Thank you, mate.
Cheers.
You heard that? Mates for life. He said it.
Yeah.
Unprompted.
Yeah.
Mates for life.
Yep. There's no script held up or anything.
Yeah. He must be so busy because he's not answering any of the messages I'm sending. But he'd be so flat out. So probably give it. I'll give it another 2 years, and then if he's still not messaging back, then I'll assume he was lying.
A very big thank you to Mark Northeast.
Oh,
Who made
True.
Who Bridget, our producer's dad, who just very casually said over dinner, "Oh, I've got someone you might want to have on your show." Thing.
Yeah.
And he said Mick Fanning, and we didn't believe it happened, but it did.
And it did.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a legend of a person and an Australian icon.
Mark.
Yeah. Yeah, Mark, actually. I won't double down on that. Mark Northeast, absolute Australian icon. Yeah, why? Who do you think I was talking about?
Well, no, that's what I thought you were talking
Yeah,
about.
Mark Northeast, yeah.
Anyway, I want to talk about something that really stood out for me in that episode was, really just the topic of grief, because I couldn't believe I was sitting across the table from a man who had 6 months prior lost his only living brother.
I know. There are times when we're doing this podcast and we're interviewing the person and they're telling their story and they're so generously sharing like whatever trauma they've been through or what they've experienced. And I find myself sitting there listening, I can't believe this happened to you.
yeah.
Like I remember it was, particularly during like Brooke Blurton's, the chat with Brooke Blurton, and there's been a number of times it's happened, but that was another one where I'm like, I cannot believe you're telling us this story.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah, I really felt that strongly with Mick. I was kind of looking at him going, for some reason I was like, what is happening in your heart right now? Like, where are you at with all you've experienced in your life? And I was just in awe of the way he was able to talk about the different energies that he thinks his brothers have now, they bring to when he talks about his older brother being, his kids have this energy around them, or when he's out in the surf, he feels the different energy of his brothers. And it got me thinking about the stages of grief. And we did touch on this with Michael Klim's episode because of his condition that he had that meant that he can't, he's a different person physically. And so he was grieving the life that he couldn't really live. And I've been thinking a lot about grief recently because I had a session with my psychologist in July last year, and she said to me, and I will go into the details of why on a different episode when I eventually feel ready. But my psychologist said to me, Hugh, you are right in the depths of the depression stage of grief. And again, I will talk about that on another episode, but not here. And so I've been paying a lot of attention to the different stages of grief and how they work and what they look like. And just to be clear, my grief is very different to Mick's, and I don't think anywhere near as intense. But I just want to talk about the stages of grief and what they potentially look like because I feel like for anyone out there who's in a grieving process, maybe they don't even realise, like I didn't realise last year it's really helpful to know that you step your way through different stages, and that what you're going through is actually quite normal. It's actually part of a process, and it's a healthy place to be. It felt like a strange thing to be told the depression I was experiencing was a healthy step to go through. So I just want to touch on the different stages. And people might remember this from Michael Klim's episode. It was the Kubler-Ross model, stages of grief. So in 1969, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote, she was a Swiss-American psychiatrist. She wrote in her book on death and dying that grief could be divided into 5 stages. Her observations came from years and years of working with terminally ill individuals. So stage 1 is denial. That denial gives you time to absorb what has actually happened. So, for example, if it was a death of a loved one like Mick, you actually sort of say to yourself, no, they're not gone. They're actually not gone. There's no way this has happened. I'm going to see them tomorrow. There's no way. And that can go on a while as you give yourself kind of like your brain time to catch up to what's actually happened. In the case of maybe a breakup or a divorce, that's like saying, no, we'll be back together tomorrow. They're just upset. They've got a bit upset about something, but we'll be back together tomorrow. We'll be totally fine. She says that denial is a defense mechanism typically used to numb the intensity of the situation that you find yourself in, which you think about is such a helpful experience, I guess, as you try and cushion the blow from what's just happened.
It's like refusing to accept what's happening.
Yeah.
It feels like that.
Yes.
It's
Yeah,
like,
totally.
no, I can't, even though it's it's real.
Yeah.
But for some way you're not. I mean, it's different with a breakup where there is like, I guess, some chance that you could get back together. But yeah, that refusal to accept, I find I do that a lot.
As you move out of the denial stage, the emotions you've been hiding will begin to rise, and you're confronted with a lot more sorrow than you may have originally experienced because you kind of pushed it down. It's a really important part of the cycle, but a really painful one for people. And the second stage is anger. So where denial may be considered a coping mechanism, anger is a masking effect. Anger is actually hiding the real emotion of the pain that you actually carry. So, for example, again, the death of a loved one, it might be like something, say, this is not in Mick's example, but saying, well, if they cared for themselves more, this wouldn't have happened. Like you're actually angry at that person for a while. Again, it's not a defense mechanism. It's more of a masking. Or a breakup, a divorce would be an obvious one, like, well, I hate them anyway, so they're going to regret leaving and I don't care. Even though you do deeply, it's just like, you're masking the way you truly feel.
So why would you using anger? Why would you be using anger to mask something? Why would you not want to say how you really feel?
Well, it reminds me of often when, for those who've got kids, when your child is really angry about something, they're actually just hiding what they're actually hurt or they're feeling ashamed and we do as adults as well, but it's like shame is a really uncomfortable, ugly emotion to sit with and to admit to. It's much easier to get angry.
Yeah.
And I think we feel a bit more in control when we're angry than we do.
And I guess maybe it's pointing the finger away from you.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, or pointing the finger away from your actual emotions, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the third stage is bargaining, where you find yourself creating a lot of what-if scenarios, which I think it makes sense, but it's a line of defense against the emotion of grief, which kind of, that sort of postpones the sadness a bit.
Yeah.
So I'm sure something Mick would have gone through was like, what if I'd stayed and we'd gone home together? Or what if I'd got him to walk home with me? Or what if what if we chose not to go to that party? Or just you play those things over and over. In a breakup, a divorce, it could be if only I'd spent more time with them, if only I'd done this, if only I'd made sure I listened more, if only I'd kind of wishing you could go back in time to change the script. And then after that, stage 4 is depression. So whereas anger and bargaining can feel very active, depression may feel like more of a quiet stage of grief where you don't potentially feel like going out and being around people. There may not be as much conversation or dialogue happening in your head around what ifs and getting angry. It's just you're really sitting in the sadness. You're really in the sadness of what's taken place, and it's almost like a paralyzing or crippling type feeling where you just cannot sometimes get out of bed, or
Almost feels like hopeless.
yeah.
So maybe the reason why you would be getting angry and masking, or what was the first one?
Denial.
The denial. It's because that feeling of depression is so painful and scary and lonely, and I guess hopeless. That's probably what you mean. I'm just sort of catching up now, but that's sort of what those feelings of how you truly feel maybe comes out a little bit more in that depression where it feels like there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
And so you're using the anger and the denial to avoid having those feelings.
In my experience, it was when I was truly honest with myself with what I truly let what had happened in our lives I couldn't avoid it anymore.
Yeah.
I couldn't bargain it away. I couldn't pretend it wasn't happening. I couldn't stop doing what if scenarios. It was just it's here. This has happened, and it's a very, very, the physical sensation to me was just like exhausting and a just heavy feeling that is always with you. And you can have moments where you forget about it, but it's fleeting. It's with you pretty much all the time. But the stage here, the next stage 5 is, and I don't know, I could be wrong, but when I looked at Mick, this is kind of what I felt like I was dealing with was acceptance. Acceptance is not necessarily a happy or uplifting stage of grief. It doesn't mean you've moved past the grief or loss. It does mean that you've accepted and have come to terms with and understand what this means for your life now.
God, yeah.
And so for Mick to talk about the different energies that he feels when he thinks his brothers, or it feels like his brothers are around him, that to me felt like acceptance. And I'm not saying he's probably got to that stage with the death of his brother from last year, but for death of a loved one, an example would be being able to say to yourself, I'm so fortunate to have had so many wonderful years with that person, and they'll always be in my memories. Or a breakup or a divorce could be ultimately, as hard as this has been, this is a healthy choice for me, or a healthy result for me. It's being able to say stuff like that and honestly mean it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder whether or not it can sort of like loop back on itself.
Yeah, well, I think it's really important to add that Kubler-Ross says that with these stages, it isn't necessarily a linear process of you have a month here, then a month there, and a month there, and then you're through it. You can go back, you can jump forward. It can be all over the place, but they are generally the order of.
Yeah, okay.
It sounds tacky to say, but generally the order of events. They're not linear, and you can get stuck for a long time. So
get stuck, but also
relapse.
Is it possible? Yeah, relapse. Possible get to acceptance and then return back to anger or denial.
Yeah. Yes. That's what. Yeah.
That's what she means. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So not linear, but I think also a lot of people need help with this stuff. It's not something you can just look at the stages and go, okay, well, I'll just go through those. You don't have to go through it on your own. Certainly the example that I will give on another episode sometime when I feel comfortable, I've lent heavily on my psychologist to help me through these stages and work through them because it is incredibly hard work. So I felt so many emotions chatting to Mick, but I was really in awe of him and to have gone through that grief cycle 3 times because of loss of a loved one.
And to still be so open to the world is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, he's so open to the world.
It's really, it's so inspiring when you meet someone like that because, one of the things that if anyone who's listened to the podcast for a while will know that like one of the things I've often dealt with and trying to kind of like reckon with is like my relationship to success and how it defines you and like what should be, like I mean, everyone's trying to figure this out, but like what's a good life, or like how do you feel worthy? How do you build your self-worth or feel like you're living a meaningful life or whatever it is? And I think what's so cool about meeting someone like Mick is that until I met him and heard his story, I mean, I just see him as like, oh, well, he's impressive because he's won world championships and he's a good surfer and he punched a shark and all these things that you hear. And it's like, wow, what a impressive person. But actually now having met him, it's like those things kind of like not pale in comparison, but like they're just so different. Like I now see him as the person who told that story and has kind of overcome all that. I'm sure he would take it back if he could, but the fact that that has happened to him and is happening to him, and the way that the way he's talking about it, the stuff he does for charity, just the person that he is, it's like, well, that's impressive. And that is how I'll think about him now. And it just makes me think about how I want to be as a person and how I want to be in the world. And it kind of devalues the things that I thought were important a little bit.
Amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah, beautiful.
The stoke levels on his parenting was also great to hear as well.
Yeah.
The stoke levels.
Yeah, that's right.
Some pretty high stoke levels about being a dad.
Yeah.
Well, Mick Fanning, Australian icon.
Mates for life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mark, Northeast, iconic
Aussie legend.
Yeah.
mates for life.
Yeah. And Mick, do call me back. Do give me a buzz. We do need to lock in that bloody lesson, don't we?
If he called you to say, do you want to go surfing, would you tell me and Josh?
Would I tell you and Josh?
No, as in, would you invite us to come as well?
No. No, I'd tell you about it
After,
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, oh no, he's got the kid seats in the back of the car. It's only room for 2 people. Sorry, mate. Yeah.
What if he said, do you want your mates to come as well from the podcast?
I'd say I don't think they surf.
Not like you and me.
Not like us, mate. I don't think they're as tubular as we are.
What if he said, oh, after that we should get him down for a bolter?
Yeah, no, I'd get you to the bolter.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, now let us have our moment in the surf, and then come down for the post drinks.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay, so
Smash a few cans, that'd be good.
Yeah, okay, cool, man.
See you there.
Yeah, it'd be good actually. Can't wait now. Oh, I feel like it's actually happening. Oh, good. All right, thanks, Mick.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode but want a little bit more, we've got some good news. We have a brand new show called A Little More Imperfects, and it's on Patreon. For a little bit of money, you'll get access to bonus episodes with Hugh, Ryan, and Josh every fortnight, early access to live events, plus other things we haven't even thought of yet. Visit patreon.com/theimperfects.